Yo. What's going on, Jazz Nation? Welcome back to Salt Lake Takes. We are back with I've lost count of episodes at this point, but back with a weekly episode, 1 week outside of Jazz training camp. So we're getting closer and closer and closer to the Jazz season opener. Super exciting here because we've been kind of drained without, much news here. But you're kind of just predicting and projecting going into the season, and it's kind of much all you can do right now, and that's okay because you got Jazz training camp coming up, kind of in the final stretch of the offseason here. Got Car Wash channel popping in early. What's going on, Car Wash? Glad to see you in here once again. But yeah, we're in the final stretch of the offseason here. I think we have like a few more storylines to like kind of, wrap up as far as like the entire NBA goes. Like you have the Dame stuff still going on. Maybe he could, like I saw reports earlier today that he could end up staying in Portland, or Portland's trying to, reconcile. I can't say the word for that, but like they're trying to make things better with that situation there. We'll see whatever happens there. You got Harden. That situation's kind of died down at this point. You don't really know what's going to happen there. I guess Philly could hang on to him for the near future and try and, work on that relationship a little bit more and see if they can kind of fix that for next season. But it seems like that Harden will not be playing in that jersey. So there's still that to iron out within the next month. And then we have Buddy Hield that is probably going to get traded here within the next few weeks. And that's probably a little bit due. He was in trade rumors here and there across the entire, last season and the offseason. I mean, he's always been one of those guys that's like, okay, the Pacers could trade him because he's not really on their timeline, but he could provide a lot to like a contending team. I saw like the Bucks were interested and the Mavs were interested. So probably maybe like you have a few days waiting on that, see what comes in as far as developments go on that end. But as far as the Jazz go, the Jazz are pretty much settled going into the season. I saw on the Jazz Twitter, all the guys were in their training, getting ready for the next season. And so our team is pretty much set here. You have the 21 guys on the training camp roster eyeing next season, and that should be fun to watch. Probably get more info on that once training camp is actually underway next season. But for today, I thought it'd be fun to go and, look into a little bit in like the distant future. Oh, shit. Oh, hold on. Wait. All right. Hold up. We got maybe some technical difficulties there. Hold up. Gotta check YouTube. Let's double check here. All right. One sec. Making sure our YouTube stream's looking fine here. 1 second, y'all. Bear with me. It's taking a year to load. Trying to see if our YouTube stream's working here. Okay, live's working. Okay. Thank you. All right. We can probably just keep it going from here. Let me just check one more time here. Oh yeah, no, we're good. Okay, sorry, I got a little bump right there, but we're looking at okay. But yeah, I thought it'd be fun to go look at the some distant trade candidates that could be popping up here and there. Because we saw in recent news, like Giannis was kind of getting a little antsy about a situation there in Milwaukee, and you have a few other guys like superstars around the league could be requesting trades very soon, as we saw. I think it was in a Woj report or Shams, I think it was Shams or Woj that ended up coming on. Is like, okay, you got have a bunch of guys up for trade next offseason. That's probably pretty encouraging for Jazz fans because that's kind of what this team's been preparing for, is that massive blockbuster deal to try and get a superstar in Utah, because they have like 12 first-round picks across the next 5-6 years. So they could go about and you just, I guess, build through the draft. But I think at least the most popular thing to do now in the NBA now is pull in those assets to try and bring in a big name star, because those big names are what bring championships. So we have 5 names on the roster here to try and see if they're feasible or not. And we'll just go down the list here because there's about 5. We have 4 like legitimate superstars that we have here that could be maybe in the realm of possibility within the next few years. And I have like 1 like borderline star that could be a guy to look into. We'll go ahead and start things off here with the thumbnail. Giannis. What do we have here on the Giannis front? Well, he came off in, I think it was a recent interview or some type of opinion piece. I was just kind of like, if Milwaukee is unable to build a championship roster here, I'm going to be down the move. So he sounds like a loyal guy, or he has sounded like a loyal guy in his time during or with the Bucks. But of course, that is subject to change because the Bucks core is old. It's old, and they lost in the first round last year. So again, you can see kind of the pathway for this team to kind of fall off the rails a little bit, and then maybe Giannis is like, as loyal as I am, I might not be able to stick around for this, and that could lead to a trade. But he has 2 seasons left on this deal, so that would expect for a trade to happen. Things don't go well this upcoming season, and then he would in turn request a trade in that offseason. If he were to be traded, he could sign to a different team, like we've seen some rumors of them doing. But as far as a trade goes, that might be a little bit difficult to obtain. I saw some Jazz fans talking about that on Twitter. Like, could this be a possibility? It could be a possibility. But if you were in the Bucks position, is Giannis a guy that you would ever really consider trading, no matter what the contract situation may be? Because he may be like, okay, yeah, I don't. He may not really want to play there or have some type of uncertainty about being there. But at the end of the day, it's Giannis. Like, that's not really a guy that you can find comparable value for, no matter what you're getting. Like, of course, you can get 10 first-round picks, but Giannis is probably one of the best players of this generation. Like, you're not going to find a Giannis in the draft. So the idea of trading for Giannis is nice, but even if he's on the last year of his deal, is it really in the Bucks' best interest to try and divvy off of him? I don't think so. Because you have seen some, like, I think it was New York that was, rumored to be in the discussion to try and put together a package because they do have those first round picks and those types of players. But is that really like his preference? I know you like there are some rumors about him going to a big market, but as far as I've seen from Giannis, he has no intention of really going to an LA or New York, or at least in some of his past comments, he seems very, committed to not, going Hollywood, I guess, because I mean, that's not really the type of guy Giannis is. I don't want to speak for him because I don't really know him personally, but he just doesn't seem like the type of guy to up and leave Milwaukee to go to LA. Like, that's been completely opposite of what he's done his entire career. So the big market thing is always going to be there because that's a narrative that the media will try and push. But could a trade happen with the Jazz? It's not out of the realm of possibility, because if there was a team to put together a package for it, it would be likely Utah or OKC, but it just comes down to the willingness of trying to go out there and deal Giannis. The thing is, if the Jazz were to go out and do a deal for Giannis, let's say in a perfect world, the Jazz put together a package. Giannis is unhappy in Milwaukee. He's like, all right, get me out of here. Danny Ainge put together a trade package to get him to Utah. It would be on a 1-year deal. Like, you're not going to probably lock him up for a long-term extension. He would probably want to play out the year, see how things go, and then he goes from there as far as his next contract goes. And if you're in the position of the Jazz, is trading for a guy like Giannis, trading away that massive capital on a 1-year deal, the smartest move to do? I don't think so. I think you're probably better suited waiting with your assets to try and get a, like a guy in the draft rather than a guy that could come in for 1 year and, make some noise, but he has the opportunity to make a free agency decision that summer. So pulling on those assets and being left empty-handed is probably the last thing you want to do. So I think when you're looking at trading for these superstars on the line for the Jazz, you have to keep in mind that you have to have them locked up for a long time, or at least probably 2 seasons would be reasonable. I mean, like, you can make a pitch for a player to be in a team in a game or a city like Utah. Sorry, if you were to have a successful run here and there in the postseason. But yeah, I just would find it hard to put together a massive pool of assets to trade for a guy like Giannis when you don't really know what his future will be. Because who knows if he comes to Utah and they aren't able to build a competent team in the 1 year that he's there, is it really going to be a place that he's going to stay long term? It's just hard for me to picture. I don't know. That's a little uncertain at this point. Probably wait and see on that end to see how the season goes for the Jazz and the Bucks, I guess. But I would put Giannis, if I had to put Giannis on a scale of like 1 to 10 realism, It's very low for a trade and for a signing as well because I don't really see Utah being a free agent destination, even for a guy like Giannis that could even consider like a small market team. I'd put it around like a. I'll be generous and get like a 3-4. I think that's fair. Like a 3 to 4 range out of 10 would be realism for the Giannis ranks. We can move on though. We got Luka Doncic. Luka has been a guy that's been mentioned pretty heavily, or at least around the Jazz, because he is that like young talent that could be um like unhappy as well as Giannis, but that is also harder to predict because like Luka hasn't really said much on the front as far as I know. I don't think he's really said that he's unhappy with the situation, but he could be. I don't know though, but let's see. We got Vesper coming in here. Do you believe the Jazz have addressed their concerns from last season, this offseason? Lack of perimeter defense, playmaking post Mike Conley, and efficient three-point shooting. All right, I'll go one by one here. Lack of perimeter defense. I mean, again, it's difficult for like to say they address these problems because again, the team didn't like change that much. Like, I mean, they added a few rookies and John Collins, but if you were to tell me that any of those 4 players were to come in and be an instant impact player for any of these 3, I mean, maybe Keontae George for that 3-point shooting and then Taylor Hendricks, I guess, but they're still rookies. They will probably take a while to come in and develop. Perimeter defense, though, didn't really add many defenders. I mean, you have Chris Dunn there, I guess, that could, play his role. And like Ochai Agbaji is going to do his, but I think it just comes down to development for that. Playmaking, I don't think was really addressed, and I think that was very, kind of apparent through the offseason. Like, Ainge wasn't really, or just not even just Ainge. I'm going to put it all on him, but the Jazz entirely weren't really focused on adding a point guard or a pure point guard like that. So the playmaking stuff wasn't really on front and center, it seems. But I think they do have an okay amount of guys that could fill into that role because, I mean, Clarkson has played point guard formerly in his career. Keontae could develop into that type of guy. Chris Dunn has that type of ability. So there are guys that can come in and step into that role post Mike Conley. But I think it might be a little bit difficult to have one guy in there and be, the X factor for that. And as far as 3-point shooting goes, probably will be a little bit better this year because, I mean, I think they did add some nice floor spacers in the draft. And you still have guys like Markkanen and Olynyk, and Sexton will be back healthy. So I think this team will be okay as far as shooting the ball goes. Playmaking will be one that'll be interesting to see. And then perimeter defense, I think should be okay. But it might not be like a super strong suit of this team. It should be serviceable though. I think all in all though, yeah. I think they've done a good job this offseason, but there might still be a few holes going into the year. But yeah, appreciate the question, man. Thank you. But yeah, let's go back to Luka. As far as the trade goes with that, it's a little bit better than Giannis because he is on that 3-year deal. I think it was 3 years. I think he's on a 3-year deal now. So if things didn't go well this upcoming season for Dallas, like let's say they missed the playoffs again, it could be a situation where Luke is like, all right, I've had enough here, and he wants to get out of there. Like, or maybe like a collapse comes with Kyrie, and then Dallas like eventually blows up. These are all projections, of course, because I think you're not going to trade Luka unless he asks out. So it's kind of predicting a massive downfall here. I think it's a little bit more realistic for the Jazz than Giannis would be because Luka is more of a player that I think you'd be willing to shell out those assets for because he is younger and on a longer contract and probably more of what the Jazz need. Going back to what Vesper was saying, I mean, playmaking and efficient 3-point shooting. Efficiency, maybe, but playmaking for sure. You would get that with Luka and just get a generational superstar that Utah just hasn't seen. They haven't seen it ever. I don't know. You have guys like Stockton, Malone, and throughout their entire history that have been, top 20 players. Talent-wise, though, I don't know if any would match up with Luka. I think that's just hard to really match up with. But it's the same type of deal with like the Bucks. Like, would it be in your best interest to trade a guy like Luka even if he is unhappy? Again, I don't know because he is still like 24, 25. Like that is a very, very, very coveted asset, and you don't want to part ways with that unless you absolutely have to. But then again, if you're absolutely forced to trade a guy like Luka, you could get an absolute haul for him. Like probably something we haven't seen before. Maybe five, 6 first round picks if he has a type of contract space left, like 2 years left on his deal. Maybe 1 year. It's harder to picture that type of grand package, but like multi-year contract for a guy like Luka, he would get probably 5, 6 first round picks, maybe an all-star player, probably like 3 like young rotational player. Like it would be a haul for him if it were to happen. And there's 2 problems with that. I think it would be difficult to build a competent team around Luka at that point if you're shelling off that type of assets. Like I know the Jazz have however many first round picks to do or at their disposal. Uh, but still, if you're trading for a guy like Luka, that's going to take away about all of that leverage. So that's not something you really want to do unless you're sure about making that move. And would a move like Luka be worth that type of uh, package? Because I like he has that generational talent, but again, like he is very like ball dominant. Like physically, he's not the most like in shape all the time. Defensively, like there are still some holes in Luka's game, despite him being this generational talent. Like, would he be willing to be that type of player to put away that type of capital for? I would still lean towards yes, despite the uncertainty there. But again, it's just a lot to because you look at a team like the Timberwolves that they could deal off 5 first round picks for a guy like that would be kind of deserving, not really at all, and Rudy Gobert. And you see how that goes. So you have to be absolutely sure if you want to make a move like this. And Luke is about as surefire as a thing you're going to get as far as the talent goes, but there still would probably be some questions around his fit and if this would be, like a win of a move for the Jazz if they approach it within next year. But it would have to come with some uncertainty with Luka and his situation and him just forcing out like I don't want to be here. Because if he's just moderately happy there and there's no reason to really move him out, I don't see the Mavericks doing that. That would just be that would be ill-advised. We got number 3 here though on the list. We got Giannis number 1, Luka 2, number 3 we have Joel Embiid. Another guy that has been hot in trade rumors recently, not with the Jazz, but just around the league because you have the Harden stuff that's going on. So if that kind of crumbles off, you'll be like, okay, well, how long until Embiid wants to go? And so it's a very, very real conversation if Embiid wants to get dealt. But I don't know if it's going to be to the Jazz. And I think of all 5 on this list, if there was going to be a one that would be the least realistic, it would be Joel Embiid. Gotta say what's up to Planet of Jazz though. What's up, bro? What's going on? Good to see you in here. But yeah, Joel Embiid, I just do not see as an option for the Jazz for multiple reasons. First of all, when you talk about concerns of trading for a blockbuster level like trade like this, Embiid is a bunch of red flags. Like hasn't been able to get over the championship hump. He's going to be older. I think he's going to be around 31 by maybe the end of next year, maybe even older. I'm not even sure because he was drafted in 2014, so he's about to be a 10-year league vet. And of course, you have the injury stuff. That's going to be always present with Embiid, especially as he ages. I'm doing solid today. Appreciate you. Kind of having a good stream tonight. Hopefully, things ramp up as far as Jazz news and just content goes within the next week. But we're kind of pushing through. But yeah, having a good night. Appreciate you. But man, I don't know if Joel Embiid would be the guy here because again, I don't know if he's really a culture fit in Utah either. And you have Walker Kessler too. So it's like, yeah, you could have a guy like Joel Embiid, a generational talent that's coming out and maybe on the trade market to be a guy that you could go out and grab. But why? For Embiid, he doesn't fit the timeline. He doesn't really fit a team need as far as the center goes. And I think at that point, you're just making a trade to make a trade. And I think it would be a situation to be like, why would they make this move 2-3 years down the line, trading for an aging center with injury problems? You can honestly make that argument with any team that trades for Embiid. So I've seen rumors that are like maybe the Knicks could get involved or maybe the Nets could get involved. I think it's really hard to picture him traded within the division. I think a guy or a team that you could look into is the Rockets because they have the coaching staff that I think players like. They have the young talent to give up. And it's a market that I think Embiid would be welcoming. So as far as like a realistic destination for Embiid, I think Houston would be a key team to watch rather than maybe New York or Brooklyn. The Jazz, though, I would take that completely off the radar. Planet of Jazz agrees too. It was many times injured. I don't like him. Yeah, I don't know about Embiid at either. I would agree there. But if there was okay, so we'll get on to number 4 here because I think Embiid's a pretty short story. You don't really need to go involved into an Embiid trade with if you're the Jazz. But one that I think could be an option that many people aren't really looking at that could maybe pop up within the next year or two is Jason Tatum. Maybe this is a bit too out there, but let's think about this. He has been in the league for about 7 seasons. He's been in the playoffs every single one. He's gotten really, really close to getting over that hump, but he hasn't done it. And they just signed Jaylen Brown to a massive extension. And if things don't really go well this year, and it's like the 8th time that Tatum's tried to, make a playoff and finals push and he hasn't done it. I mean, at that point, man, it's like he might want to ask out. Like, I know everyone's on like, well, they might trade Jaylen Brown after this 1-year contract. What about Tatum? Like, what if Tatum wants to get out? I know, like, he is a better option. If you had a choice to trade one of the two, you clearly trade Brown. But Tatum not only has better value, but I think probably more teams would want to trade for him. And I think if you're looking at a trade from the Celtics perspective, maybe Tatum makes more sense if you really want to just kind of blow up the team. Maybe not blow up, but like I don't know, just recalibrate because if things don't work this season with Tatum, I mean, what will? I don't know because they've tried about everything. They've had so many different cores and different teams around him and nothing's worked. So maybe he just calls it. But when it comes to the Jazz, that would be a name that I would definitely look at if he's on the market because he does have that Danny Ainge connection. Danny Ainge drafted Jason Tatum. They were together for multiple years, and he knows that he can win games with them. So it might be a lost cause in Boston, but if things were to kind of go wrong there, who's to say that Utah couldn't come in and present a nice package for him? But logistics of a deal might be hard to come by because it's just like, why would the Celtics trade him if they're trying to be competitive? Maybe like for a trade like the Celtics, you look at it like a Brown or a Tatum trade. You would have to picture them trying to almost do like sort of a reset to try and get the right value for those players because you won't get a ready to win now player for Jaylen Brown. Probably won't get one for Tatum either. You would probably get young players and picks from a rebuilding team that's trying to make a move like the Jazz. And for someone like Jaylen Brown, I just don't know if you're getting the right value for the type of player he is because he is on a massive contract and has limitations. I don't know if he's going to get the type of package you want if you are or Brad Stevens. Tatum, on the other hand, could do that, and I think Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens would be willing to make a deal like that if that situation were to come up. But this is a lot more projection because we haven't seen anything from Tatum even signaling that he would want out. But I just find it hard to believe that he's going to sit here and take this beating a week or year after year. Like, since 2017, this dude has gotten really, really close to getting to the finals and winning the finals, and it hasn't happened. When is he going to call it quits? I don't know, and I can't speak for him and make it seem like that he wants out because I don't think he does. But looking forward to 1 to 2 years, he has 2 years left on his deal, so it maybe next year he's on a 1-year deal, and then I don't know. That might be harder to picture. But if there was a guy to look at and try and trade for, I might honestly opt Tatum over a guy like Luka or a guy like Giannis because I think he fits the timeline more, and I think Danny Ainge could do a lot more with him. I got one more here. I didn't type him out here. All right, we got one more here as far as I think potential candidates for the Jazz go. And this one's more of an under the radar guy. Tatum's a superstar. This guy's more of a star, not really like top 10 level player. But I think if the Jazz are in a market to trade for a guy, Trae Young could be the potential guy to look at. And there is a lot of hate or a lot of negative criticism around Trae Young, but you just gotta think about it for a second. He would fit the timeline very easily. He's young, and he fits what this team would need: scoring, playmaking. And he does that at an elite level, probably better than what about 99% of the league could do, even within 2-3 years. Like you fast forward, who is going to be some of the better playmakers this league could have in the next half decade? Trae Young has got to be up there as one of the guys that's going to be able to move the ball and make plays, like up there. Like, and the Jazz need that. They clearly need that. Fans are pressing for them to look for that this offseason, and getting a 20-10 guy like Trae Young would fix that. And there are some clear limitations with him, which I think you'll hear the criticism about. Like he has size concerns, defensive concerns. There's some locker room stuff that's come out about him. I don't know if those are true or not, but I think Trae Young could be a solid fit here because you have defensive guys and other guys that provide size that can cover up for a guy like Trae Young. And more importantly, as far as the trade goes, he has 4 years left on his contract. So eyeing a potential deal for the Jazz to make, you want a guy to be on long term. Trae Young exactly does that. No guy like Giannis, Luka, Joel Embiid, or Tatum will be on as long term as Tatum, or on as long term as Trae Young. Trae Young has 4 years on a respectable deal that you could build with, and it just comes down to, is it the right fit for this Jazz team? I don't know if Danny Ainge would want a guy that is more undersized and plays on one side of the ball and is that playmaking type that he didn't seem to value this offseason. So it's like lack of realism might be there for a guy like Trae Young because I don't know if the Jazz really want him. But I think if you pair a guy like Trae Young next to guys like Ochai Agbaji, that could be a 3-and-D, Lauri Markkanen, that does really well off the ball, Walker Kessler, really great interior defender, and like Taylor Hendricks or let's say John Collins, pair up with John Collins once again, dude. I think a Trae Young fit in Utah actually makes a ton of sense, and you probably won't hear a ton of fans be cheering that on because the narrative around Trae Young is very, very, or the discourse is very not good, because he kind of has a target on his back. But I think if he was in Utah, he would be a fan favorite just because he's the type of guy that's like, you hate to play against him, but you love to have him on your team because he could be a great shooter, great passer, great play. Again, this is exactly what this Jazz team needs, and he could be on the market. There was mentions of him maybe being on the Lakers' radar. I don't know how feasible that is. So if that's the only guy or only team that's really on the market for a guy like Trae Young, which it probably wouldn't be, I think you just got to take a look at him, at least investigate the idea. And that's what the Jazz will do. Every single time that you'll see a big name come up, you'll see the Jazz in those rumors and probably investigating that. But if Trae Young pops up, that could be a good option. Okay, we got Vesper here with some, I think, free agents for next offseason. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Tobias Harris, and DeMar DeRozan. Okay, so let's talk about all of these for the Jazz real quick. Paul George. I think Paul George and Kawhi have similar concerns, and honestly more concerns in type of guy like Joel Embiid would. Injury concerns. I don't know if they really would fit here. Of course, I am a huge Kawhi Leonard fan. I think Kawhi is stellar, but he's going to be 33 and he can't play a full regular season. I think putting out that type of money for him that the Jazz would need to, I think that would be ill-advised. Same with Paul George. I like Paul George a little bit more as far as the signing would go, because I think he would make a little bit more sense and probably would be more reliable as a player, even though he does have some injury concerns himself. Tobias Harris depends for the right price. Of course, right now he's going to be on that massive 1-year deal. He could fit what the Jazz need, though. A catch and shoot type of guy at the 4. If they're struggling shooting the ball like they kind of were last year, that could be a guy they end up targeting. But if they are struggling with shooting like they were last year, I think DeMar DeRozan would be the absolute opposite guy that they would want to add. And then we had Vesper saying, oops, but to say who'd go after in the 2024 offseason also includes OG. If you're including OG in there, I would absolutely go OG. It might be a little pricey to add him for a guy of his caliber, because OG hasn't really proved much as far as a all-star type of player, but there is that value around him and that narrative that's okay, with the right development, he could be a really nice player for someone. But the Jazz have the money to go after a guy in free agency. I would definitely lean towards OG over any of the 4 guys he previously mentioned, just because he does have that better fit, and I think, um, having that two-way ability is super important, especially for a team like the Jazz, so you could put someone like OG at the 2, and you move forward with a starting 5 of, let's say, next season, you sign OG, your starting 5 would be something like Keontae George, OG Anunoby, Lauri Markkanen, hopefully, if you bring him back, and then, like, Taylor Hendricks and Walker Kessler. Again, I can't hate that team. Is it a playoff team next year? Probably. I would say so because it's a young growing team that is only gonna keep getting better with a bunch of first round picks. But if you add a guy like OG that can plug and play in about any lineup, I think that is a very, very smart signing. I think for any team. Like, just not for like, I don't know, like I'm not sure how much you really offer a guy like OG who's unrestricted. I'd be a little hard pressed offering any more than 35 mil a year for him because that's like star money. But you saw a guy like Fred VanVleet get like 30 million a year this offseason. I would probably pay that and more to, or a little bit more. I just said I wouldn't pay 35 though. It's tough for a team like the Jazz. You got to really, really put a lot of emphasis on where you're spending your money because you are a small market and not really a free agent destination. If you're able to bring on a guy like OG though, I think that could be super, super good for this team. If he can develop and kind of like hone into like that number 2 option for a team. Oh, like yeah, I would definitely go OG here. I wouldn't hate a guy like PG and Kawhi here. I wouldn't. I just don't think it'd be the smartest move long term because you know what you're getting out of them. They're older. They're probably going to regress, and they're probably going to be less healthier as you move forward. So I don't. Free agency next season should be really interesting because I think the main priority for Utah will be making sure Markkanen is retained long term. And that could come out of next offseason's pockets because they could just decide to extend him and get him a pay raise right then and there. Like I've seen a bunch of people saying that probably will be happening. It's not 100% by any means, but if the Jazz are going to be, if Markkanen puts up the same type of season as he did last year, the Jazz might just go, all right, we'll give you your extension now, like the Kings did with Sabonis this past offseason. So the Jazz can easily do the same exact thing here, and that might take away the idea of adding in a top tier free agent. But if they're able to hold off for 1 year and bring in a quality player, I mean, OG or a guy that's younger on that side of like good side of progression and age, that would be who you want to target. Not really a veteran type of guy, I would say. But that's just me though. I don't know. Maybe Danny Ainge had something else in the cards. Um, let's see. We got Planet Jet saying next season, Ainge and Zanuck will try and keep Laurie on the team. Yeah, I think so. I don't see why you'd really let go of a guy like Laurie because he seems like he wants to be there. He's grown and developed really well in Utah, and as a player, if you've been in multiple other situations and haven't found your footing, but then you get to somewhere like Utah and things like are going really, really well for you, why would you want to mess that up? If the Jazz are willing to pay him, I don't see any reason why he'd leave because he kind of has it made here. He could probably be a yearly All-Star, perennial All-Star candidate, and have a really stable front office and future, and just team to move forward with. I don't see why Laurie wouldn't resign unless the Jazz are completely irrelevant this season. Maybe he just wants to be competitive. I think Laurie should be here for the foreseeable future, unless the Jazz want to make a blockbuster involving Laurie and none of their picks. I think he'd want to be the number 2 guy you pair one of these stars mentioned with. I think he'd be a perfect elite number 2. Markkanen could be the perfect number 2 to one of these superstars. He can be a number 1 now, but is it going to lead to playoff series wins? Probably not. That's why you want to get a superstar level guy in there, and that's why you have those picks and those trade assets. But I think Laurie is kind of a cornerstone to this team. But I mean I kind of went over my 5 guys. It might be a shorter episode tonight, and we might call it here. We could. I think we're gonna come back. Yeah. I think we're gonna call it here. We can come back next week. Same time is gonna be Jazz training camp. Hopefully around that time, so we might get a little more information and news on that side, and might hopefully have a longer episode for you. But I think as far as things go to talk about Utah right now, we're kind of in the waiting game until the season really starts. But that's all I got. If y'all want more Jazz content as far as far as the week goes, make sure to check out Inside the Jazz on si.com. Or if you want to hear more from me, make sure to check out my Twitter at Jared Cook NBA right there. And we'll be back next week, same time. Hopefully, a little more content for y'all. But yeah, appreciate everyone for showing out tonight. And yeah, I'll see y'all next week. Appreciate y'all. See you.